We begin tonight in Chicago, where National Guard troops are mobilizing on the outskirts of that city. The governor of the state of Illinois does not want them there, nor does the mayor of Chicago. The president of the United States today called for those two men to be jailed. Quote, Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. Governor Pritzker also. And on a day when Trump's former FBI director was being arraigned in a Virginia courthouse, talk like this should probably be taken quite seriously.
These leaders in these local cities, along with Pritzker and Johnson, ignore what's going on, or, sir, they're helping Antifa cover it up.
I think actually they're petrified. You know, their families live there, everything else. I actually think they're scared. Pritzker was a failure in his family. They threw him out of the family business. Guy's a loser. But you know what? They actually, I believe they're scared. They're actually frightened for their lives.
For his part, Governor Pritzker does not appear to be petrified.
This is a convicted felon. I mean, think about that, who's threatening to jail me. I got to say, this guy's unhinged. He's insecure. He's a wannabe dictator. And there's one thing I really want to say to Donald Trump. If you come for my people, you come through me. So come and get me.
That kind of posture from the governor is pretty important at a time like this, because this is all happening just a week after the president of the United States assembled the 800 highest-ranking commanders of the U.S. Armed Forces and told them to be prepared to fight the enemy within.
We should use some of these dangerous cities as training grounds for our military, National Guard, but military. Because we're going into Chicago very soon. That's a big city. It's the enemy from within, and we have to handle it before it gets out of control.
What we've been seeing in Chicago already from ICE and other federal agents sure does look like an extension of that project. It feels like an attempted federal occupation, with images like this shared by a reporter with the Chicago Tribune of a federal agent pointing a weapon out of a car window at a woman who was filming them. Last Friday, we saw folks in a residential neighborhood, in the middle of the day, bright sunshine, get tear gassed. The chemical agent was used just a block away from an elementary school during a school day. Across social media, there is video after video after video of people being detained, often violently by federal agents, while onlookers yell at them. Like this video on your screen of Border Patrol trying to forcibly restrain a man while onlookers attempt to intervene. In one instance, a Democratic congressional candidate was violently thrown to the ground by ICE. You see that there? For exercising her constitutional right to protest the agency's presence in her city. Just last month, a pastor was shot in the head with what appears to be a kind of pepper ball projectile while speaking outside an ICE detention facility in the Chicago suburb of Broadview. I want to warn you, some viewers may find the video of that incident upsetting. The Department of Homeland Security says those, quote, agitators were blocking an ICE vehicle and throwing bottles. In his own words, that man, Reverend David Black, said, quote, I told them there was still time to repent, believe the good news, and turn from their wicked ways. That's when they opened fire. And again, this is all just the beginning. Today, NBC News is reporting the White House is now holding serious discussions about invoking the Insurrection Act of 1807, a law that the White House believes would allow Trump to marshal federal troops to act as law enforcement agents in our cities without nearly as many legal constraints over how those troops could operate. It would be, I think, akin to a kind of declaration of war against the people of this country with no actual legitimate justification. There is no insurrection. One person close to the White House telling NBC the debate over the Insurrection Act is working its way up an escalatory ladder. What we are seeing in Chicago sure looks like the opening move in a larger vision for this country, where the leader consolidates power to harness state, local, and federal police in cooperation with the U.S. military, which is trained to defend America from foreign threats, and instead unleashes them against America.
We have troops in the streets of America in multiple places, and we as a country have to face what's happening. If it's in your city, you probably already have seen it, and you have your own views of it. If it's somewhere else, as we know, Politics can be local and people may be tuning it out. But we know Texas National Guard members have now crossed state lines questioning our federal system where we have different state powers and federalism. They're over in Illinois. There are plans to get troops in Chicago. There are lawsuits trying to stop this and limit it. And it's not just those type of Guard troops. The president using ICE and other federal agents to push the limits in Chicago and other places. And what we're seeing includes patrolling odd places. You're looking at this river patrol of federal ICE agents in Chicago, which is not exactly right near the Mexican border, to say the least. There are scenes of agents using smoke grenades, countering protests. We've been showing you that. One incident caught on camera just last month where agents fired pepper balls at a pastor. You can see the video there. That's when it first happened. The pastor, we can report, is now suing ICE for multiple human rights, First Amendment constitutional violations, a pattern of extreme brutality, and arguing that this isn't just patrolling the streets for safety, which of course federal agents are generally allowed to do, but rather an effort to, quote, silence the press and civilians. Trump is on the attack against the Democratic governor there and the Chicago mayor, who've objected to exactly this type of use of force, the governor responding.
Look, he's a coward. He says a lot of things to the camera. He likes to pretend to be a tough guy. Come and get me. Come and get me. He's demented, literally, unhinged. And this is somebody who's so insecure that he lashes out pretending that he can come arrest people for no reason at all. He can't. He isn't going to do it. Taco. Trump always chickens out.
Democrats, you see there, hitting hard, and that's not just language, although it was tough language calling him demented. It is also substance, because the governor is doing what some Democrats previously have been accused of falling short on, facing the threat or deployment of what you see on your screen and hitting back in every possible way, publicly, verbally, politically, and in the courts. That is what Democrats now say might be necessary to push back on the federal powers you see in these multiple places. As for the general public, even in an environment where it seems some speech is chilled, the vast majority here, 58%, against these kind of deployments, especially when there's no apparent.
I see the guns and bats in this room. You are unleashed. The handcuffs that you're carrying, they're not on you anymore. They're on the criminals. And whatever you need to get it done, we're going to get it done. State, local, federal, on President Trump's promise, we are going to get it done.
The pretext in all of this has been fighting criminals. But Stephen Miller and Donald Trump want to treat Americans who do not support their agenda like enemies, like people the U.S. is engaged in war against. And I've got to say, the response we're seeing against that vision in cities like Chicago is really actually inspiring, emboldening. I mean, despite being far less willing to weigh into American politics than his predecessor, the new Pope, Pope Leo, who is from Chicago, is calling out Trump's overreach. In remarks to bishops visiting him at the Vatican today, the Holy Father urged them to use the pulpit to speak out against Trump's draconian immigration policies. This administration has decisively lost the moral high ground on this issue. People at a deep level understand that what they are seeing in Chicago is wrong. They know that they are free citizens of a free country that we spent hundreds of years at trying to achieve and perfect. They know they have a right to film ICE and even to peacefully, verbally challenge ICE. They have a right to protest, to stand outside detention centers, to try and shame people that are committing what they believe to be grave injustices. And the fact that they are continuing to do that, even in the face of this onslaught, is a testament to the fact that Americans will not be intimidated. Just like a certain Chicago delivery cyclist outmaneuvered ICE last week.
What's up?
Jacob Soboroff is MSNBC's senior national political and national correspondent. He joins me live from Chicago, not far from where that footage was taken. Jacob, what's going on there tonight?
Chris, this is amazing. I was just thinking this was almost exactly 4 months to the day that you and I talked on the streets of LA after that first raid in downtown Los Angeles brought hundreds, if not thousands, of people to the streets. It feels like deja vu. And I say that because this is a jubilant atmosphere. These are people who do not and will not tolerate federal troops, whether they are highly kitted up Border Patrol agents or members of the National Guard on the streets of Chicago. You know this better than anybody. Tonight is a critical playoff game for the Chicago Cubs. A lot of these people could be doing something else, sitting in a bar, watching television. They're out here because most of them say they're here to protect democracy. I've not seen anything like this in Chicago. I spent a lot of time here. You know, my wife's from here. Look at this. This is Michigan Avenue in the middle of downtown Chicago. Here, too, hundreds, if not thousands of people. And it's not a feeling of anger. It is not a feeling of terror, which is being felt in much of the other parts of this city and of the Chicagoland area, where they're indiscriminately going around picking up people, not who are violent criminals or the worst of the worst, but I'll give you two examples that I saw myself. A 53-year-old mother going to pick up meat to make a stew from Mexico who has been here for 30 years and is now in the Broadview ICE Detention Center. Another one is two gentlemen who are on their way to work as mechanics, literally going to pick up a cup of coffee in Cicero, 90% Hispanic, 90,000 people there, the most Hispanic neighborhood in all of Illinois, and Border Patrol rolled up on them. Literally, the guys left their coffee cups there. They detained both of those guys. One of them's already in Georgia on his way to being deported. There, they're angry. There, they're terrified. Here, the energy is it's electric.
This entire situation feels like the clearest example of how Trump is twisting presidential power into a personal weapon. Everything is described here. Mobilizing National Guard troops against local wishes, threatening elected officials with jail, framing American cities as the enemy within. This all shows a man who treats the presidency as a throne instead of a public trust with real democratic responsibilities. The operation in Chicago serves his control above actual safety or ordinary law enforcement aims. Trump is creating this climate of fear to test how far he can push federal authority before someone tries to stop him. When a president labels governors and mayors as criminals for just disagreeing with him, that behavior functions as intimidation rather than real leadership. When the response escalates to deploying the military into American cities under the pretext of fighting crime, this maneuver prioritizes Trump's power projection over any genuine pursuit of justice. The Insurrection Act was never intended to become a political shortcut to domestic control, yet it's being discussed in that light as if soldiers on city streets represent routine policy. The supposed crackdown is sold as protection from crime while it actively undermines the liberties that the nation claims to defend. Peaceful protesters are detained. Journalists who document federal actions face threats, or worse. There was this pastor preaching outside of an ICE facility who was hit by what appears to be a projectile, I think a pepper ball or some other less lethal round. But it looked like it hurt, and it could have done permanent damage. A congressional candidate who filmed federal agents was thrown to the ground. There are many instances of this, and these all form this pattern. They point to this government and this organization in the government experimenting with its capacity to exert force and strength and violence against its own citizens. That experiment mirrors the founders' worst fears about a standing military turned inward. And silence from many in power deepens the problem. There have been a few governors and mayors who have really pushed back strongly, and courts have provided some checks, but otherwise, who's talking out? There's this absence of robust, sustained resistance across the broader political class that really makes this situation much more precarious. Legal remedies can help, yet legal fixes grow weaker when political courage falters and no one stands up. The public response in Chicago matters because people are refusing to be cowed. Protesters, pastors, and independent witnesses are asserting their rights and speaking up. That civic resilience is critical. What is developing here risks becoming a future template for federal forces that are normalized inside cities, dissent treated as this enemy on the inside, and executive power expanded under emergency rhetoric, all leading to even more and more and more. If that blueprint becomes standard practice, future leaders will know that they can deploy troops whenever they want. They can silence their opposition and then just brand it all as patriotism. The reality is stark. These moves do not secure the nation. They reveal how fragile freedom has become when this one person treats it as his personal property.